parts.
On this predatory episode of MythBusters, it's a jawsome shark special.
Nothing to take me!
Adam and Jamie take the plunge to celebrate their most epic shark adventures of all time.
I'm gonna commence urinating in my wetsuit, okay?
With scenes from Jaws.
I saw Jaws. That didn't bother me at all.
And real life. The guys count down the 25 most spectacular shark myths in MythBusters history.
That's what I'm talking about!
And the shark chart topper? Well, let's just say, it's the ultimate twist in the tail.
In your face, sharks!
Who are the MythBusters? Adam Savage
70% chance of science!
and Jamie Hyneman.
Is that hot enough for you?
Between them, more than 30 years of special effects experience. Together with Tori Blanchie,
Why are we doing this?
Brent Imahara,
That was pretty cool!
and Carrie Byron.
Let's do it.
They don't just tell the myths, they put them to the test.
Can you tell why I'm excited?
Because you got a new bat toy?
I did, but more importantly, this is a signifier that it is my favorite week of the year. Come on, you know it, it's Shark Week. And not only any Shark Week, this is actually the 25th anniversary of Shark Week.
So it started all the way back in 1988?
Yep, back when I was in my 20s and you were somewhere in your 70s, Discovery started this entire phenomenon with this special, Sharks, Predator or Prey. Followed closely by The Shark Takes a Siesta. And who can forget specials like Air Jaws, Anatomy of a Shark Bite? What about Ocean of Fear?
Well, and let's not forget that MythBusters did some shark specials as well.
We did, and in fact, that is exactly why we're here. We've tested dozens of shark myths. We're going to count down our top 25 in honor of the 25th anniversary. Some oldies but goodies, some never before seen. We're going to show some behind-the-scenes footage. I really can't say anything more except it's going to be awesome.
With a back catalog to rival Shark Week itself,
Yeah! I'm gonna commence urinating in my wetsuit, okay?
Adam and Jamie are ready to reveal their top 25 most epic adventures. Where thrills, spills, and ills are all on the menu.
Nothing to take me!
But with such a smorgasbord to select from, where to first?
I remember when Jaws came out. I didn't see it in its initial release because I was, I think, 10, and that was just too little. But a couple years later, they re-released it, and I went and saw it because I thought I was old enough, and I was totally wrong. I ran screaming from the theater about 25 minutes in. It's really hard to explain how much that movie and the fear of the water infected everyone at that time. I mean, you thought twice before going into a swimming pool. I'm not kidding.
I saw Jaws. That didn't bother me at all.
I really think that Jaws is absolutely responsible for a whole generation's fear of sharks. And that's why we're going to kickstart this whole thing talking about ways to fend off an angry fish.
Fending off a shark is a myth that was spawned by Spielberg because his monster backs off when smacked on the snout. But does fighting back really work?
We've actually tested several ways of fending off sharks. The first one was the nose punch. We obtained some, shall we say, novelty fists and attached them to some robotic arms for Buster, who we gave the ability to punch. Are you ready? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. That was pretty close.
And with Buster firing at all cylinders, the team buzzed to the Bahamas, where, with sharks aplenty, the experiment could begin.
But once Buster hit the water, it became pretty obvious to everybody that our design was a little too complicated. It somehow ended up with this rig where Jamie's holding on to Buster. The dive master is giving the punch command via the underwater comms that Carrie can hear, and she then tells me to pull the lever that makes Buster punch. But of course, after it's gone through all these steps, the shark is long gone and Buster is punching nothing but water.
It's not to say that we didn't score the odd hit, but very few were right to the nose or the gills, which meant that it was time for MythBusters Plan B, which in this case was me. I went into this thinking that if a shark wanted to eat you, it was gonna.
Hey, the sharks are all around them. He isn't eaten yet.
But as it turned out, they didn't like being punched at all. I mean, it's not like I was throwing haymakers or anything, but they definitely felt it.
Indeed, punching a shark was myth confirmed. But as Adam alluded to earlier, there was a third part to this fighting back trilogy.
So now we know sharks don't like being punched. But that led us to wonder if, in the midst of a shark attack, when a shark has got you in its jaws and he's thrashing you all around, could you even have the wherewithal to punch him in the nose or find his eyes to gouge them out? And that led to the development of RoboShark.
RoboShark, or Carcharodon roboticus, was fearsome enough in the shock.
It's time to go swimming.
It's time for his first meal.
But in the water, he was something else.
That is awful.
That's a horror show.
Yet when Adam ventured into those terrible teeth,
So the shark bit Adam in the ass.
he found that despite the thrashing and bashing, he was able to find the eye and gouge it out.
I got it! I'll admit that we've gotten a lot of fan mail about these fighting back shark myths. Some people say that our reef sharks weren't tough enough and so our punching tests are invalid. Others say that great whites attack with such ferocity that you would bleed out before you'd ever even think about getting to their eyes. My takeaway, honestly, if I'm in the middle of a shark attack, I'm going down fighting.
It's a superstar. But next are some super senses.
Now, it's important to know how to fight off a shark because if they want to, they'll find you because their senses are something else.
Ain't that the truth? As well as sharing the same senses as us, sharks have an extra sixth sense. Located in a shark's snout are receptors called the ampullae of Lorenzini. These detect the electromagnetic field that all living organisms emit. And it's this sleuthing sense that helps make sharks such a success.
You might say that when escaping from a shark, you can swim, but you can't hide.
Where are we in the countdown?
Next in the countdown is mythical ways of repelling sharks.
Right. Given that sharks find it really easy to find us in the water with their acute senses, and they're pretty hard to fight off, it's better if you never let them get close to you in the first place.
Well, we've tested 3 different techniques for repelling them.
Yes, with dramatically different results.
And the first of that trilogy is something hot and spicy. The story goes that the Kuna Indians used a shark shield of the hottest habaneros they could find. But did their path of pepper really keep the sharks away, or did it merely add a little bite to the bite?
To find out, we took the hottest chilies we could find, which measured 350,000 on the Scoville scale. It's effectively equivalent to putting a hot lump of coal in your mouth. Added some water to a blended up mixture of them, and dove right in.
Once under, the plan was simple. We'd attracted the sharks with a bait box, and then Adam would burst the chili balloon with a hydraulically controlled needle.
I'm gonna pop this as soon as the sharks are close enough.
But here's the thing. We didn't need to use the needle. The sharks kept eating the balloons.
Oh, I totally bit the balloon!
Needless to say, we then ramped up the concentration of chili until we reached a point that if I'd eaten that balloon, I'd be dead. But the sharks didn't react at all.
With chili's not hot stuff. Next up was some animal magnetism.
I like this myth because there was some real science behind it. The idea was to use a strong enough magnet that you would overload the shark's 6th sense, and it'd hightail it right out of there.
And that was an idea that looked promising, as magnets first caused lemon sharks to flinch.
Whoa! He almost got away.
The myth looked better again when nurse sharks refused to cross a line of magnets on the seafloor.
And it's pretty clear that the magnets are a shark repellent. Well, let's face it, a shark repellent needs to work not just for a baby shark, but also an adult shark in full attack mode. So that's where we went next.
And that's where the results took a nosedive, because with 8 massive magnets on a box of bait, the hungry adults didn't even flinch.
That was a totally unexpected result. Everything we've seen up to this point is telling us that sharks are reactive to magnetic fields, and we got nothing.
That was as well as unexpected. The third myth about repelling sharks comes from a piece of classic fisherman folklore that a dolphin saved my life. Apparently, dolphins are so protective of each other in their pods that if they see another animal being menaced by a shark, like a human, this biological impulse kicks in and they'll protect them too.
So the story goes. But with real dolphins unlikely to cooperate, the MythBusters had to build their own.
Yeah! That's great! So then we packed up our dolphin and took him to South Africa. Why South Africa? Well, as any fan of Air Jaws knows, that is the place where great whites do the most amazing thing. They leap all the way out of the water attacking their seal prey. Our plan was pretty simple. Step 1, put a seal decoy behind the boat and see if the shark bites it. That way we know there's sharks in the area and they're hungry.
You feeling lucky, punk?
I am feeling lucky. And that didn't take long at all. Whoa! Whoa!
So now we knew that the sharks were around and the sharks were hungry. So for step 2, we added Flipper to the mix.
All right, we're good.
And lo and behold, despite 2 hours of towing, we got not a single other shark attack on our seal.
So then we took the dolphin out of the water, left the seal decoy in the water, and within a few minutes, bam! Oh! Yes! Awesome! And I know, I've heard the complaints that our test is invalid because our dolphin was a robot and made of a former mattress, but the fact remains that the entire time it was in the water, our seal decoy did not get hit once. That just means to me that if I'm in the water and I know dolphins are nearby, I'm going to feel a little bit safer. In your face, sharks!
Still to come on this jawsome special.
This would be what it'd be like if you were abducted by aliens.
The countdown heads to a confounding conclusion. It's Shark Week's 25th anniversary, and to celebrate, the MythBusters Jawsome Spectacular is counting down Adam and Jamie's top 25 shark myths.
I'm jumping into shark-infested waters for science.
It's a little scary down here.
Where it's already clear that sharks are immensely powerful predators. But are they as powerful as Hollywood proposes? Cue 2 myth moments about shark strength, courtesy of Jaws.
The first one I like to call barrel baloney, and it's this. When Quint and his shipmates are trying to catch Jaws, they harpoon him with 3 flotation barrels. These are supposed to tire the shark out and keep him from swimming away. But it doesn't stop him. He dives right down with the 3 barrels with all the ease of an angry walrus.
To put the clip to the test, Adam somehow got his hands on the original barrels from the movie.
The only thing we're told we can't do is burn them, blow them up, or lose them.
Has he watched the show?
Then we tethered those barrels to a concrete block that was at the bottom of the dock at Mare Island. A length of rope went from the barrels to a force gauge, which was attached to a tank, like you do.
Yep, and with Adam tanked up, the guys were set to see what force could pull the barrels down.
All right, so I think we're ready. 1,500 right there. Are they under, Carrie?
We're just under.
Just about 1,200 pounds.
We have 1,200 pounds.
So it took 1,200 pounds to pull those barrels under the water. Could a great white shark do that? No. Look, a record-breaking large great white might be able to pull those barrels down for a second or two, but the idea that he could keep them down for hours, it's totally busted.
Jaws 0, MythBusters 1.
Later on in the movie, there's another scene where the angry shark starts ramming Quint's boat so hard it actually springs a leak. So first, we went out and got ourselves a boat, just like the one in the movie.
I christened the Orca 5. Ew. How the hell did they do this?
So then we made ourselves a shark that had a rubber and fiberglass head, a steel pipe body, and most importantly, the same mass as a large great white.
So then, back at the marina, we put our shark into the water, aimed it at the Orca 5, and prepared to drag it towards it at 25 miles per hour, which is the fastest speed a great white has ever been clocked swimming at.
Okay, go! And when I called go, I never thought for a moment that this was going to work. But it turns out that 3,000 pounds moving 25 miles an hour packs quite a punch.
Camera in the water.
In fact, it packs enough of a punch for this movie myth to be confirmed.
My shark went belly up, but it definitely pierced the side.
Meaning it was Jaws 1, MythBusters 1. An honorable tie. So far.
Now, what both of these Jaws myths have in common is that the shark is moving and moving rapidly, which brings us to the next story, which is that supposedly if a shark stops moving, it will die of asphyxiation.
Like all fish, sharks get the oxygen they need via their gills. But is it true that all sharks have to be moving to let this process happen? Well, Carrie, Tori, and Brent got suited and booted to find out. Where the plan was simple. Grab a shark and hold it down.
Don't make them angry and then push them towards me.
But when that didn't work, their shark expert instead tickled a shark into a trance. And what do you know?
That's MythBusted right there. The shark is holding still and he's just fine.
Now, it turns out that some sharks do in fact have to move to breathe. It's a system called ram ventilation. But the vast majority of sharks are totally fine to stop for a bit and chillax.
Did Jamie just say chillax? So, ancient relics is not a myth about the Hyneman, although he has already lived several lifetimes of men. It is specifically about the quote you often hear about sharks, that they have existed unchanged for over 400 million years.
It's frequently said to be fact, but are sharks really older than the dinosaurs?
Yes, sharks first appeared in the fossil record about 400 million years ago. But have they remained unchanged since then? Well, no, not really. The sharks back then looked nothing like the sharks today. It wasn't until about 100 million years ago when the classic shark shape that we all know and love first evolved.
So sharks are ancient, and what's more, the predatory ones have one thing in common. They can detect a drop of blood in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, right?
The myth that sharks can smell a drop of blood in a swimming pool has been around forever. But when we tested it, we came up with some interesting results.
1, 2, 3.
First up, we used human blood. And the sharks, well, the sharks couldn't give two hoots.
No, they've been through it. They've been through it. They didn't turn around.
Even though lemon sharks have been known to attack people.
So then we moved on to fish blood, which we diluted to 1 part per million and put it in a, shall we say, a contraceptive balloon.
All right, let's let them swim up a little higher.
This time, when the blood hit the water, there was a distinct change in the shark's behavior.
Oh, he turned, he sped up, he turned.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Yes, the sharks reacted to 1 drop of blood in 1 million drops of water. But in your average Olympic-sized swimming pool, you've got over 50 billion drops of water. And there's just no way that a shark stands any chance of detecting that.
Plus, how does a shark get into a pool in the first place?
Welcome back. It's the 25th anniversary of Shark Week, and Jamie and I are counting down our top 25 shark myths.
We've already looked at fighting off sharks, repelling sharks,
None of them seem to notice the magnets at all.
and shark strength. But there's plenty more to come.
I was actually going to say there's plenty more fish in the sea.
But that wouldn't really make sense, would it?
Actually, me saying that there's plenty more fish in the sea makes perfect sense when you realize that our next myth is that a shark is a shark is a shark, i.e. that all sharks are the same. Now, it's true that most of the sharks we've featured, lemon sharks, reef sharks, great whites, and tiger sharks, and indeed most of the sharks featured in Shark Week itself are streamlined carnivorous predators. But that is not true of all sharks.
Take the whale shark, for example. Yes, it's shark-like in appearance, but even though it's supersized, it eats mostly plankton. Then there's the angel shark that looks more like a ray because it lies in wait on the sea floor. Add goblin sharks, thresher sharks, hammerheads, and it's pretty clear that the myth all sharks are the same is busted.
So sharks sure are diverse. But what's next?
Next up is a myth we got from one of Discovery Channel's rivals.
Didn't I say which one?
I won't say which one, but they had a shark film in which the narrator stated that there was a certain frequency of sound that was like a calling card for sharks.
That frequency was 40 hertz, and supposedly it's the shark's favorite because that's exactly the kind of vibration that a wounded or dying fish makes. So the shark hears that and thinks, dinner.
In this certain show, they called it the yummy hum.
But in this show, the hum went numb.
Our plan was simple. Play the yummy hum and see if any sharks showed up. We did no other chumming whatsoever. All we did was play the 40 hertz tone.
But after 20 minutes, not even a curious krill had come to play.
So the yummy hum didn't work, but that didn't stop us from trying to attract sharks. Next on the menu is man's best friend.
Over the years, many shark attacks have supposedly been caused by canines. The theory being that their swimming style and pooch perfume draws sharks in from far and wide.
Now, when Cary Grant and Tori came to film this, I have to tell you, there was a huge discussion about whether or not to use a real dog.
In fact, we found a dog and its owner who were willing to get into the sea with sharks.
We even talked about making the dog a little doggy life jacket in case he got tired.
And we thought about building it a miniature shark cage.
Ultimately, there was no getting around the fact that we considered it 100% unacceptable for the dog to be eaten in the course of the experiment.
But come on, a result is a result, right?
So with real dogs ruled out, the MythBusters had a shaggy solution. Although he looked simple, RoboDog was anything but. Capable of releasing smells from a real dog, accurate audio, and non-electronic movement, he was the ultimate robot in disguise. But would he attract sharks?
The guys did this very cool experiment where they counted the number of sharks attracted to just the boat in a 20-minute period. No chum, no nothing.
Every once in a while, they come and check me out just to see if I'm edible.
They then came back 24 hours later and threw RoboDog in, who swam like a champion.
RoboDog looks great. He's totally swimming like a real dog.
But he didn't just swim.
Okay, Tori, stand by. We're going to release the urine and anal secretion.
Yep, first RoboDog went wee, then he pooped, and then he bled.
See a shark. Come towards the surface.
But even with all that, after 20 minutes, the shark count was precisely the same as it had been during the control, which means myth busted.
I still think we should have used a real dog.
Who's the good boy? Who's the good boy?
Next up is something that had gotten Jamie into a bit of a flap.
So when we left South Africa, this whole yummy hum thing started to bother me.
Oh, here we go.
You see, that whole 40 hertz thing was meant to sound like an injured fish. But then afterwards I thought, why don't we just build an injured fish?
Because that wasn't the myth.
So back in shark-infested waters, Jamie returned to this topic. But this time he went old school. 2 plastic fish on a pole and the world's smallest dinghy.
And in all fairness to Jamie, when he got those fish to start flapping at the surface, the sharks went ballistic.
Hey!
Jamie just kept flapping away. He was clearly having the time of his life.
Yeah!
But underwater, I could see that more and more sharks were coming, and they were getting more and more aggressive.
That's what I'm talking about.
And I keep thinking, I'm underwater wearing full shark chainmail, and Jamie's up on the surface sitting in a little boat meant for a child to use on a calm lake. He is one puncture away from being shark bait. So despite his enjoyment, we pulled the plug.
Big baby. So a flapping fish can attract a shark. I knew I was right.
Yeah!
Remember, do not try anything you are about to see at home.
The MythBusters have been cruising their way through a jawsome extravaganza that will end with a twist. But next on the menu is something to sink your teeth into.
One of my very favorite moments ever on MythBusters came when we were filming in South Africa, the very first time Jamie got into the shark cage underwater.
Well, what can I say? Danger is my middle name.
Now, before you write in, yes, it's true. I did not see it firsthand. I was passed out on the boat from excessive vomiting. But I watched the footage at the hotel that very night, and I have to tell you, it still gives me goosebumps.
It's funny, but a lot of people have asked me what was going through my mind when that happened. The answer is really simple. I was thinking, haven't we already proved that shark cages are not shark-proof?
Inspired by a cagey scene from Jaws, the guys had put this heavy metal myth to the test.
Okay,
With surprising results. When rammed by their shark sharammer at 25 miles an hour, their shark cage turned to toast.
look what's on the shark.
Is that a piece of the cage?
It's like it went right through it.
Bullseye!
But luckily for Jamie, the shark in South Africa rammed his cage at just 5 miles per hour. And that meant that this time, the bars held firm.
He was like,
Next up, something with bite.
so listen to this. A shark's bite is more powerful than a hyena. Or how about this? A shark's bite can be upward of 300 pounds per square inch. Or my favorite, a shark's bite can crush the exhaust pipe on a car.
The point being that there is a huge number of myths out there about the power of a shark bite. And we wanted to find out the real story.
And to do just that, the guys built themselves a Bite Force rig
That works great.
and headed to the open ocean.
So in the Bahamas, we converted our rig to a kind of a giant shish kebab, put it in the water, and waited for sharks to chomp down on it.
Come on, it's just like a big hot dog.
But they never did. Not at the surface,
Come on, fishy, fishy, fishy.
nor on the seabed did any shark chomp down on our rig. Their reluctance to actually participate in our experiment, I think, is the reason there are still so many myths about shark bite strain.
Breaking into the top 10 is a myth that was magnetic for Jamie.
Okay, so you remember the magnet experiment where the baby sharks seemed to steer clear, but the big sharks didn't care at all? This actually gives an interesting insight into the inner workings of the Hyneman brain. See, most of us would watch that footage and simply say, oh, bummer those magnets didn't work. But not Jamie. Jamie can't stop thinking about the fact that it seemed to work on baby sharks.
It's pretty clear that the magnets are a shark repellent.
And before you can say Maverick Walrus, he has hatched a plan to use magnets to make a baby shark remote control. I swear.
It was a little unconventional, but thanks to a rig that could turn magnets on and off on cue, Jamie believed he could make a shark do his bidding.
This would be what it'd be like if you were abducted by aliens.
But unfortunately, the abduction didn't go well. The tiger shark tot just sulked on the seabed, at least until the unit was removed.
What a shocker!
It It's claimed that ancient fishing cultures used shark skin as sandpaper to ensure their skiffs were splinter-free. To put the myth to the test, first came the single scrape test, where the shark skin did okay. Then came the wood rub, where it did better.
Oh, yeah, you can feel the difference.
Wow.
And by the time they rigged it up to an orbital sander,
That's shark skin?
it was positively glowing.
What do you think?
I think it works beautifully.
Really?
Next in the MythBusters Jawsome Special, it's time to make room for a Hollywood boom.
The movie was called Deep Blue Sea, and in it were these sharks that had had their brains genetically modified in hopes of finding a cure for Alzheimer's. I know, but that wasn't what we were testing. We were testing the grand finale.
Come to mama.
A grand explosive finale that involved a very specific recipe for disaster.
He's gaining on us!
With the movie ingredients replicated to perfection,
In 3, 2, 1, fire!
they got nothing. So they reset and tried again, but got the same result.
3, 2, 1, fire!
It was only when the guys lost the plot to replicate the results that they got the shark shrapnel they'd yearned for.
As fans of the show know, Adam loves his costumes.
I'll be dancing on Jamie's intestines.
So is it really a surprise that he dressed up as a knight to test whether armor is good shark protection?
Maybe not, but it was a shining example of a surprising result.
Okay, Adam. I think there may be some damsel fish in distress down there that need your attention.
Because as Jamie chummed the water, the sharks that showed up seemed to be attracted to the suit.
It was not what we expected at all. But later, our shark expert explained that the electrical receptors on the sharks might have gone into overdrive in the presence of so much metal. Let's face it, having sharks attracted to something that's supposed to protect you from them is pretty far from ideal.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to catch on.
Now, in some ways, it maybe shouldn't have been a surprise to us that the sharks were attracted to my silver suit. When we were first testing Yum Yum Yellow, it was silver that seemed to be the sharks' favorite.
Adam's right. When the guys set up a rig to test the surface story that sharks are attracted to yellow, it was their silver bait bag that was hit first.
Oh, yeah! Fantastic!
While the yellow of the myth was the only one left untouched.
Yeah, it looks like Yum Yum Yellow is the only one that's actually left, which is the opposite of what I predicted.
But further testing proved that actually there was no pattern at all.
What I got out of this is that it's random. I don't see any color preference.
You might say that sharks are the ultimate unfussy feeders.
Oh, we are at the total business end right now.
Yep, just the top 4 to go.
And they are all pretty awesome.
And you know, people are going to be surprised at which one is number 1.
I totally agree, but let's not jump the gun just yet.
Or the shark.
Indeed. Before we get to the top one, there are 3 more super memorable moments, and they start with a little night diving. My hat is off to Cary Grant and Tori for diving in the dark to test whether flashlights attract sharks.
Mine too, because first up, the guys jumped into shark-infested water in near complete blackness.
This is a little scary.
For 20 minutes, they stayed under, counting the number of sharks on their shipwreck. 24 hours later, they returned with flashlights in hand, and that's when the danger level really rocketed up.
Got a lot of activity down here. I got 2 sharks. I got 3, 4 sharks, 5, 6 sharks right here.
As the myth was chaotically confirmed.
Look at this guy right here. He's coming straight for the light. Oh my gosh. I just smashed a shark in the head with the flashlight. These guys are starting to get aggressive.
I have to say, even though I don't spook easily, this scares the heck out of me. I mean, you've got your little flashlight, and it's illuminating like something in front of you, maybe a shark, but the only thing I would be thinking is, what's behind me?
Holy crap.
If anybody finds this tape, tell them I'm sorry. I'm so scared of sharks.
Next up, moment 3, which starts with a bang. A bang that comes from Jaws. But can the famous scuba tank explosion really be real? In a shipping container at an abandoned naval base, the guys took aim to find out.
So we had the same kind of tank from the movie, the same kind of gun from the movie, and a shark that I guess was fake like the movie. So with all of them lined up, it was go time. Starting the trigger now.
Inside the bunker, the tank had turned torpedo, rocketing around left, right, and center. But an explosion, it wasn't.
But here's the thing. Even though our first test was much less spectacular and didn't result in an explosion, meaning that the myth was busted, I still feel like it would have a better than even chance of killing or at least getting that shark away. Imagine you shoot the front of this tank, it starts to jet air and rockets the tank down into the shark's belly, embedding himself maybe in his intestines. If it didn't kill him, at least it would make him go away.
On July 30th, 1945, the USS Indianapolis was torpedoed by a Japanese sub, resulting in the loss of over 500 men, many of whom were taken by sharks. On file, several survivors reckoned that a strategy of playing dead was what kept them alive.
And that is something that Cary Grant and Tori tested in what is absolutely my favorite shark moment on the show.
Ah, yeah, that's pretty cool.
First, the guys chummed the heck out of the water.
Cocktails and appetizers!
And then, in the middle of this feeding frenzy, Grant and Tori jump in.
Oh. This sucks. This sucks so bad. This sucks a lot.
But that's not all. Grant has to lie there motionless for 10 minutes while Tori thrashes around him. 10 minutes! Can you imagine?
Come on, Six! Don't get to dinner!
And after 10 minutes is up, the guys swap roles.
So now Tori's playing dead, and Grant is the one who's panicking and thrashing. And remember, Grant knows what happened in the first test. He knows the thrashing diver is going to attract more sharks, which makes test 2 far scarier.
Help! Help!
Now, I'm no expert, but I would say that Grant was actually panicking. There's no acting in that. After all, this is a guy who has a fear of fish touching him. And there he is in the middle of the ocean trying to get eaten. I mean, that's the point of the test. It's classic.
Yep, it sure is a classic, as the guys literally put their lives on the line for science.
Mean any harm, they're just hungry.
Although Tori and Grant probably don't remember it quite so fondly.
It was terrifying.
Okay, this is it. Drum roll, please. But after punching, eye gouging,
I got it!
dressing up like a knight, mythical ways to attract sharks,
That's what I'm talking about!
mythical ways to repel sharks,
Oh, I totally bit the balloon!
and a whole lot of Jaws stuff thrown in too. You can quite rightly be wondering what is left.
Well, as it turns out, at the top of the list is a myth that we haven't actually tested on the show. But it's arguably the biggest myth of them all. And that is that sharks are evil creatures to be avoided at all costs. And if a bunch of them go extinct, we should celebrate. That's pretty much it.
But if there's one thing I've learned in all the time that we've been doing this show and all the shark myths that we've done is that sharks are in fact magnificent. They're beautiful, inspiring, incredible animals.
And sure, while occasionally they happen to kill somebody who ventures into their domain, you're more likely to be killed by a hot dog, a regular dog, a pig, a horse, a toilet, a vending machine, a Black Friday stampede, lightning, a bed, an ant, a game of football, or a roller coaster. Sharks account for just 5 people worldwide each year.
And yet each year, humans kill millions upon millions of sharks. And for what? For shark fin soup? It doesn't even taste that good.
Yep, if there's one thing that this countdown and the 25th anniversary of Shark Week can inspire, it's to help stop the slaughter of a creature that's been around for 400 million years.
Creatures that have survived the 2 biggest mass extinction events in geological history. Let's not have them go extinct on our watch.
Because then we'd have no more of this.
Oh, this is great. Look at him. He's just wondering what the hell to do.
Oh, yeah.
There. We've done it.
Adam Savage
70% chance of science.
and Jamie Hyneman.
Is that hot enough for you?
Between them, more than 30 years of special effects experience. Together with Tori Blanchie
Why are we doing
Brent Imahara
That was pretty cool.
and Carrie Byron.
Let's do it.
They don't just tell the myths, they put them to the test.
Can you tell why I'm excited?
Because you got a new bat toy?
I did, but more importantly, this is a signifier that it is my favorite week of the year. Come on, you know it, it's Shark Week. And not only any Shark Week, this is actually the 25th anniversary of Shark Week.
So it started all the way back in 1988?
Yep, back when I was in my 20s and you were somewhere in your 70s, Discovery started this entire phenomenon with this special, Shark.
Don't try what you're about to see at home.
We are what you call experts.
On this predatory episode of MythBusters, it's a jawsome shark special. Adam and Jamie take the plunge to celebrate their most epic shark adventures of all time.
I'm going to commence urinating in my wetsuit, okay?
With scenes from Jaws
I saw Jaws. That didn't bother me at all.
and real life. The guys count down the 25 most spectacular shark myths in MythBusters history.
That's what I'm talking about.
And the shark chart topper? Well, let's just say, it's the ultimate twist in the tail.
In your face, sharks!
Who are the MythBusters? Where to first?
I remember when Jaws came out. I didn't see it in its initial release because I was, I think, 10, and that was just too little. But a couple years later, they re-released it, and I went and saw it because I thought I was old enough, and I was totally wrong. I ran screaming from the theater about 25 minutes in. It's really hard to explain how much that movie and the fear of the water infected everyone at that time. I mean, you thought twice before going into a swimming pool. I'm not kidding.
I saw Jaws. That didn't bother me at all.
I really think that Jaws is absolutely responsible for a whole generation's fear of sharks. And that's why we're going to kickstart this whole thing talking about ways to fend off an angry fish.
Fending off a shark is a myth that was spawned by Spielberg because his monster backs off when smacked on the snout. But does fighting back really work?
We've actually tested several ways of fending off sharks. The first one was the nose punch. We obtained some, shall we say, novelty fists and attached them to some robotic arms for Buster, who we gave the ability to punch. Are you ready? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. That was pretty close.
And with Buster firing on all cylinders, the team buzzed to the Bahamas, where, with sharks aplenty, the experiment could begin.
But once Buster hit the water, it became pretty obvious to everybody that our design was a little too complicated. It somehow ended up with this rig where Jamie's holding on to Buster. The dive master is giving the punch command via the underwater comms that Carrie can hear, and she then tells me to pull the lever that makes Buster punch. But of course, after it's gone through all these steps, the shark is predator or prey. Followed closely by the shark takes a siesta. And who can forget specials like Air Jaws, Anatomy of a Shark Bite? What about Ocean of Fear?
Well, and let's not forget that MythBusters did some shark specials as well.
We did, and in fact, that is exactly why we're here. We've tested dozens of shark myths. We're going to count down our top 25 in honor of the 25th anniversary. Some oldies but goodies, some never before seen. We're going to show some behind-the-scenes footage. I really can't say anything more except it's going to be awesome.
With a back catalog to rival Shark Week itself,
Yeah! I'm going to commence urinating in my wetsuit, okay?
Adam and Janie are ready to reveal their top 25 most epic adventures. Where thrills, spills, and ills are all on the menu. But with such a smorgasbord to select